Here's something worth thinking about as you settle in tonight. In your whole life, you have never once seen anything truly far away. Every star your eyes have ever found is as close as your next-door neighbor in galactic distances. Tonight, we're going to the center of our galaxy, to the thing every star you've ever seen is circling. A supermassive black hole called Sagittarius A, which is as heavy as 4 million suns. The light arriving from there tonight is 26,000 years old. It left in the deepest cold of the Ice Age, when ice lay a mile thick over half the northern world, and it has been falling toward your street ever since. Our fastest machine ever, aimed there tonight, would need more than 40 million years, over 100 times longer than our species has existed. And here's the strange part. Among the great distances of the universe, this one is the short one. Tonight we'll cross it together, the only way anything ever has. If you enjoy falling asleep to distances too big to fit in a human head, do me a small favor and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and lets me keep making these deep dives for you. Also tell me in the comments where in the world you're falling asleep tonight. For now, dim the lights and settle in. Let your shoulders come down and your jaw unclench, because tonight there's nowhere to get to and nothing to catch. The traveling has all been done for you, and it ends at your window. Tonight, you're not the traveler. You're the destination. Have you ever wondered why every star you can see is, by the galaxy's measure, standing in our doorway? How one man found the center without ever seeing it, by counting the moths that swarm around a hidden porch light. How a man hired to hunt telephone static heard the center humming by accident. What a radio message to the center would cost. And who, or what, would be here when the answer came back. Why the last time the sun stood where it stands tonight, there were dinosaurs drinking at the rivers. What kind of sky you'd fall asleep under if Earth lived downtown, where night never truly comes. And the strangest one of all, why do the people who spend their lives measuring this uncrossable distance end up calling it a gift? That answer is the gentlest fact in tonight's story, and the road to it starts above your roof, with stars you think you know. Let's begin. Start at your own window, because the first fact of the night lives there. Every star you have ever seen with your own eyes, every single one, on every night of your life, belongs to our own galaxy. Not most of them, all of them. The summer triangle, the winter hunter, the pole star your grandparents steered by, every point of light you've ever wished on, is a resident of the Milky Way. The same city of stars that holds the Sunday, and they're not even scattered through it. They're huddled around us. Almost every star you can see lives within about 1,000 light years of your bed. And most are far closer than that. 1,000 light years sounds enormous. And it is, until you learn the size of the city. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across. Draw it as a dinner plate. And everything your eyes can reach, every constellation, every bright wanderer, every faint grain of the sky, fits inside a single fleck of glaze. You've spent your whole life looking at the inside of one small room and calling it the universe. The stars are not the view. The stars are the window frame. Take a little tour of the famous ones, and you'll feel how local your sky really is. Sirius, the brightest star of the night, the one that follows the winter hunter across the sky, is about 8.5 light years out. 8.5. Tonight's subject is 26,000. Vega, the bright summer beacon your grandparents' radios were tuned by, is 25 years away. The Seven Sisters, that little huddle of stars that looks like a tiny question mark of light, ride along at around 440. Red Betelgeuse, the hunter's famous shoulder, burns 500 or 600 years out. Close enough that we argue about its health the way neighbors argue over a fence. Even Deneb, the swan's tail, one of the farthest stars an ordinary eye can catch, sits a couple of 1,000 light years away at most, and astronomers still debate exactly where. Line them all up. The whole aristocracy of the night sky. and their porch lights. The very farthest of them has covered less than a tenth of the road tonight's episode is about. When you look at the sky's most legendary stars, you're not gazing across the galaxy. You're reading the names on your own street's mailboxes. And how many mailboxes are there in total? Fewer than you'd guess. Count every star a sharp eye can find on a perfect dark night. Both hemispheres, horizon to horizon, and you get several thousand. That's the whole show. From a city, it might be a few dozen. Now hold that against the census. Our galaxy holds several 100 billion stars. Do the honest division, and it comes out to this. For every star you can see, there are about 100 million you can't. You haven't seen one star in every million of your own home galaxy. Not one in every 100 million. There are a few lights in your sky that break the rule, by the way. In the other direction. The planets, those steady wanderers that drift through the constellations, are absurdly, laughably close by tonight's standards. Their light reaches you in minutes and hours, not years. They're not part of the room at all. They're furniture on our own windowsill, the only lights in the whole sky that machines with our names on them have actually visited. Everything else up there is stars, and every star is a neighbor. And past the neighbors is the night. The night sky isn't the galaxy. It's the galaxy's front step, lit by a porch bulb. And the city behind it goes on for 100,000 light years. Does that make the sky feel smaller? It shouldn't. It makes the sky honest. Every culture that ever named the constellations was working with the visible few thousand. And they built heavens and myths and calendars from them, and none of them knew they were reading only the first line of the first page. You get to know. You can stand on the same doorstep with the same eyes and hold the rest of the book in your head. That's the actual difference between you and every sky watcher before the modern age. Not better eyes, a longer library, and here's why the sky never told you any of this. Your eyes judge distance by comparing the view from your left eye against the view from your right, and that trick dies completely a few meters past your window. Beyond that, everything is guesswork by size and haze, and stars offer neither, just points, all equally small, all equally sharp. So your brain does the only honest thing it can. It pastes every star onto one smooth ceiling, all at the same height, the great dome of night. And that dome is a fiction. The real sky has depth that would buckle your knees. 2 stars that look like twins, side by side above your roof. Maybe strangers separated by thousands of light years. One behind the other, no more acquainted than a firefly by your window and a lighthouse across the sea, which happen to line up for one moment from where you stand. The constellations aren't groups, they're coincidences, seen from one particular porch. And from any other star, they dissolve into new shapes with new names. Hold that as you look up this week. The night sky isn't a ceiling above your town. It's a canyon, seen from the rim, at night, with no way to feel the drop. But there's one thing you can see from your street that isn't a neighbor, and you've probably seen it without knowing. On a clear summer night, away from the streetlights, the Milky Way crosses the sky as a soft, pale river. And down low, toward the south, if you live in the northern half of the world, that river widens and brightens into a kind of glowing steam. Old star maps put a teapot of stars right there, and the glow rises off it like steam off the spout. That brightening is not a cloud, and it's not a trick of your eyes. It's the light of the galaxy's downtown, the vast crowded center, seen from the suburbs where we live, across 26,000 light years of space. It's the deepest thing a human eye can comfortably find. And people have watched it forever, without knowing what they had. Finding it is easy, if you'd like to. Some clear summer or early autumn evening. Face south, late, and look low. The teapot stars are modest but tidy, a little lidded pot with a triangular spout. tilted as if pouring onto the horizon. City light will hide the glow. But from anywhere properly dark, look just above the spout, right where the steam would rise, and there it is, a brightening in the river, wider than many moons laid side by side, soft as breath. You can cover the heart of the galaxy with your thumb. People do exactly that every summer, without ever knowing what they've covered. When you face that glow, you're facing the middle of everything our sun has ever belonged to. And the light touching your eyes did not set out this year or this century. It set out 26,000 years ago, give or take, and it has spent the whole of human civilization in flight, crossing the quiet dark at the fastest speed there is. So it could end its journey tonight, on a street, in a pair of eyes, over your roof. People have loved that band of light for as long as there have been people. And every culture gave it a road's name, because it so plainly goes somewhere. In one tradition, it's a river of heaven. In another, a path of spilled milk. In another, the road the birds follow south. In another, the backbone of the night, holding the sky up. Nobody knew what it was made of. It looks like glowing mist, like weather. And for thousands of years, the finest minds alive argued about whether it was vapor or fire or something the mountains breathed. Then, a little over 4 centuries ago, somebody pointed the newly invented telescope at the mist, and the mist came apart into stars. Thousands upon thousands of faint stars, far too dim and crowded for the bare eye to separate, blending into smoke the way distant city lights blend into one glow along a highway at night. The river of heaven turned out to be our own galaxy seen from inside, edge on, the way you'd see a crowded room from a chair in the middle of it, and the bright thickening in the south. The steam above the teapot turned out to be the direction where the room goes deepest. That soft patch of light, your ancestors called the backbone of the night, is the combined shine of millions upon millions of suns packed toward the center of everything we belong to, so far away they melt into a single silver breath. While we're here, let's be accurate about what the downtown actually is, because it isn't a single point of light. The middle of our galaxy is a vast, glowing swell of stars, wider than the whole distance from here to most stars you can name, and it has a shape. Modern surveys show the swell is stretched into a long bar, like a glowing beam of old golden stars laid across the galaxy's middle, with the spiral arms unwinding from its ends. Seen edge on, from far away, the bar even bulges into a soft peanut shape, which is a funny fate for the heart of something so grand. The stars there are mostly ancient, older than the sun, packed close and moving quick. So when tonight's episode says the center, it means all of that. The bar, the swell, the deep crowded blaze of it, and buried in the very middle of the middle, at the pin of the whole wheel, sits tonight's true destination, the black hole we named as we set out, Sagittarius A. We'll stand at its door later tonight and hear how anyone ever proved it was there. Hold the picture the right way round. The glow above the teapot isn't a lamp in a window. It's the whole lit city, seen from so far away that 100 million windows have melted into one soft shine. The lamp in the middle is something else. The lamp in the middle, wonderfully, isn't a lamp at all. One small note of fairness before we go on, because sleep is global. If you're falling asleep in the southern half of the world tonight, in Australia or Chile or South Africa, you have the best seats in the house for this entire episode. From down there, the center of the galaxy doesn't skim the horizon. It passes high overhead, almost straight above your roof on winter nights, and the teapot's glow stands tall and bright in a way northern sleepers never quite see. The galaxy's downtown crosses directly over your bed, and if you're in the north, don't feel cheated, because you get the opposite view, and it has its own quiet poetry. On winter evenings, when the hunter is up, you're facing away from the center entirely, out through the thin side of the disk, toward the galaxy's back door and the long dark beyond it. Summer nights, you face the crowded middle. Winter nights, the empty edge. Your year is a slow turn of the head, from downtown to open country and back, and you never once had to move. Sit with the departure of tonight's light for a moment. Slowly, because that departure is the best measuring stick you will ever own, better than any number, and it costs nothing to keep for the rest of your life. 26,000 years ago, the Ice Age was at its hardest. Great sheets of ice, taller than any building we've ever raised, sat on top of half of Europe and most of Canada, and the world's coastlines ran differently because so much of the ocean was stacked up on land as frozen weight. There were people. They looked exactly like us, and they were us. Small family bands wrapped in furs, following the herds across cold grasslands. Mammoths still walked. Somewhere in those same years, in firelit caves, people were carving little figures out of stone and painting animals on walls, some of which still survive. Nobody had planted a field yet. Nobody had built a wall or a wheel or a word for either. That's when tonight's light left the center. Since then, on this one small world, the ice retreated. The rivers found their beds, farming was invented, then writing, then cities, then every empire you've ever heard of rose and fell, then all of recorded history happened. All of it, every name in every book. And the light was in flight the whole time. It didn't cover the distance across some unimaginable stretch of cosmic time. It covered it across a stretch of time we can almost hold, the length of the human story since the deep ice. That's what 26,000 light years means. The center isn't far away in the manner of legends. It's far away in the manner of history. You can even ride along, if you like. Because the beam kept a diary, and its last pages are wonderful. When tonight's light had covered half the road, 13,000 years ago, the ice was letting go of the world, the great melt filling the seas, and people were just beginning to wonder about planting things instead of chasing them. When the light was 5,000 years out, the first cities were raising their first walls, and somebody was pressing the first written marks into wet clay. At 1,000 light years to go, roughly the era of long ships and quiet monasteries, the beam entered your neighborhood, the 1,000 light-year bubble that holds almost every star you can see. 4 and a bit years ago, it swept past the sun's nearest neighbor, the last porch light on its route. This morning, it crossed the orbit of Neptune, with 4 hours left to travel. 8 minutes out, it passed the Sunday, a second and a quarter before it ends. It passes the moon, and then it's here, through the curtains, over the rooftops, done, a journey of 26,000 years finishing at the speed of a blink on the wet surface of a human eye, or on the shingles of your roof, or on the pavement outside, where it lands softly and constantly, all night, every night, like the world's oldest, gentlest rain. And notice the word constantly, because it changes the picture. This isn't one beam that arrives tonight and is gone. The center never stops broadcasting. Behind tonight's light stands tomorrow's, 1 year less traveled, and behind that the next, an unbroken column of light, 26,000 years deep, marching toward your street in single file. Every night of your life, a fresh slice of the column lands. The light you catch tomorrow left a year after the light you catch tonight, which means the sky is never the same sky twice. Every evening, you're shown the next frame of a film that has been running since the Ice Age, delivered at 1 frame per night, no repeats, no reruns. Tonight's frame left when the glaciers stood at their fullest, the frames arriving when your old left when the melt had begun, and frames are already on the road, tonight, right now, that will arrive long after every name we know is forgotten, carrying news of a downtown none of us will ever be told about. You can't step under the same sky twice. Nobody ever has. The river of heaven is a river in the truest sense, always flowing, always new water, and your window is one small stone it has decided, for the length of your life, to keep touching. Make it personal, because it is. On the night you were born, a particular slice of that column landed, light that had left the center 26,000 years before your first breath, timed by nothing and no one to arrive exactly then. It fell on the hospital roof, or the house roof, or the roof of the car, wherever your first night happened. The way it falls on everything, every birthday since, another year's slice has arrived for the occasion, uninvited and unfailing. The sky over your childhood summers, the one you may be caught through a tent flap or a car window on some long drive, was a different reach of the same river, frames a few years apart on a reel 26,000 years long, and the slice that will land on the last night of your life left the center just as long ago and is already on its way, has been on its way since the ice, threading the arms and the soot lanes toward a rooftop that hasn't been built yet. There's nothing somber in that. It's the opposite. It means every night of a human life is attended. The oldest light in the neighborhood shows up for all of them. The first night, the last one, and every unremarkable Tuesday in between, without ever once being asked. Faithfulness at that scale has no name in any language. We just call it the sky. Now, a number like that slides off the mind unless you shrink it. So let's play the shrinking game, and let's play it properly, because it's one of the best games there is to fall asleep to. Take the sun, which is over 1,000,000 times the volume of Earth, and shrink it down to a single grain of sand. Set that grain on your bedside table. At that scale, Earth is a speck of dust, too small to see, orbiting the grain at about the width of your finger. The whole solar system, every planet, fits comfortably on your bed. Now, where's the nearest star, the very closest grain of sand to ours in the entire universe? Across the room, out in the hallway, it's about 14 kilometers away. One grain of sand on your bedside table, and the next grain sits in another town, a 3-hour walk through the dark, with nothing in between but a few specks of drifting dust. That's the true texture of our galaxy. It isn't a crowd of stars. It's a country of empty, sown with sand, one grain every few towns. And now the question tonight actually asks, on this same scale, with the sun a grain of sand by your pillow, how far is the center of the galaxy? It's 90,000 kilometers away. That's not across the country. That's twice around the whole planet Earth. The model that fit the solar system on your bed and the nearest star in the next town cannot fit tonight's distance on the world. So flip the game inside out. Instead of shrinking the sun, shrink the whole galaxy, all 100,000 light years of it, down to a dinner plate on your kitchen table. Now the map fits, and here's what it shows. The center of the galaxy is the middle of the plate, where a soft mound of light rises like the yolk of a fried egg. Because that's honestly the shape. A wide, thin disk with a glowing swell at its heart. Our sun, on this plate, sits a little over halfway out from the center toward the rim, in one of the faint streaks of glaze that spiral through the disk. And how big is the sun on the plate? It isn't. On a plate-sized galaxy, the sun is thousands of times smaller than a bacterium, an object no microscope on the table could find. The entire solar system, out to the sleeping comet cloud, is far smaller than the finest scratch on the porcelain. Every city, every ocean, every night you've ever slept through, the moon landings, the whole of history, all of it happened inside a speck, that small, sitting quietly in the glaze, just over halfway out. And tonight's enormous distance, the 26,000 light years we can't cross and can't call across and can barely think across. On the plate, it's 8 centimeters, the width of your palm. That's the cruelest kindness of the shrinking game. It can make the distance graspable, or it can make us visible, but never both at once. A map that shows the road hides the traveler. A map that shows the traveler cannot hold the road. While we're holding the plate, one honest confession about it. Every picture you've ever seen of the whole Milky Way, the beautiful glowing spiral seen from above, every poster and textbook figure and screensaver is a painting, an informed, careful, lovingly updated painting, but a painting. No camera has ever photographed our galaxy from outside, and as you now understand, none ever will on any human timescale. because the photographer would need to travel tens of thousands of years just to turn around and look. We are mapping our house strictly from inside it, like someone drawing their own town without ever leaving their bedroom, working from what passes the window. And the mapping is genuinely heroic. A European survey satellite spent years measuring the positions and drifts of nearly 2 billion stars, one by one, building the truest three-dimensional map of our neighborhood ever made. Radio astronomers trace the spiral arms by the cold breath of their gas. The bar, the arms, the warp in the disk's brim, all of it has been worked out from inside by triangle and patience. But the family portrait itself, the one clean photograph of home, is the one picture our species will simply never own. Every other galaxy in the sky we can see whole. Ours, never. The universe's one firm rule of photography: you may shoot every house on the street, except the one you live in. So the shrinking game breaks, and we escalate to the fastest measuring stick there is, light itself, because light makes every distance into a length of time. Light is absurdly quick. In the time it takes your heart to beat once, a beam of light could lap the whole Earth 7 times. The moon, our own porch light, is 1 second and a bit away. The sun is 8 minutes away, which means you've never seen the sun as it is, only as it was while your kettle boiled. The outer planets are afternoon distances, light hours, and then the ladder steepens. The nearest star, that grain of sand in the next town, is 4 years away at the fastest speed the universe permits. The brightest stars of your winter sky are decades and centuries away. The pole star is over 400 years out, so its light left around the time people first pointed telescopes at the sky at all. And the center of the galaxy is 26,000 of those years. Do you see what just happened? We started measuring in heartbeats and kettle boils, in human moments, and within 4 steps we were spending the whole of civilization on a single distance. And that's with the fastest thing that exists. The speed of light feels like a superpower everywhere in daily life, across rooms, across oceans, even across the solar system. Point it at the galaxy, and it moves like honey. The fastest thing there is turns out to be slow. That's the first honest taste of tonight's distance. It isn't that our machines are weak. It's that out here, even light crawls. Which brings us to the machines, because you might be wondering how our best hardware does against this road. The honest answer is the heart of the whole night. The fastest human-made object in history is a space probe that studies the Sunday. It gets its speed by falling, diving close past the sun again and again, deeper on every pass, until, on its closest dives, it moves at nearly 200 kilometers every second. That is blisteringly, absurdly fast. At that pace, you'd cross from London to New York in under half a minute. You'd pass the moon in about half an hour. This is the fastest thing our species has ever made move. The current world record for the entire history of human hurry. Point it at the center of the galaxy. Let it keep that record speed forever. No slowing, no stopping, and it arrives in a little over 40 million years. 40 million. The Himalayas are about that old. When our record holder set out on this imaginary trip, India would have just been colliding with Asia, and the highest mountains on Earth would rise from a flat sea, grow their glaciers, and carve their valleys, all of it, while the probe was still on its way downtown, or run the 40 million years through life instead of rock, because it's even stranger. 40 million years ago, the ancestors of whales were still finishing their move back into the sea. The great grasslands hadn't spread. Antarctica was only beginning to freeze. Our own ancestors were small, big-eyed climbers, a long age before anything walked upright. Launch the probe tonight, and by the time it coasted into downtown, the gap between its builders and whatever waited by the mailbox would be that kind of gap. Not a later chapter of our story. A different book by different authors who might keep our fossils in a drawer, and that's the record pace. Our beloved farthest travelers, The old probes actually leaving the solar system right now fly at 1/10 of that. Aim one of those at the center, and the trip takes around 450 million years, which is such a strange span of time that the galaxy itself would rotate twice before arrival. The ship wouldn't so much cross the city as wait for the city to come around twice. Want the same fact from the other direction? Take the two famous old probes, the Golden Record ships, the farthest things human hands have ever touched. They've flown for half a century. They've left the sun's weather entirely. They are, by every headline, in interstellar space. Now, run their clocks forward by tonight's distance. Give them 26,000 years, the full flight time of the light landing on your roof. How far do they get? Not even halfway to the nearest star. In the time the center's light spends crossing the whole road, our farthest traveler covers less than half of one step. That's the gap between the fastest thing there is and the fastest things we own. And here's the part worth actually keeping. It isn't a sad fact. Nobody who built those ships expected them to arrive anywhere. They're letters, not ferries, and letters are patient. But it does settle tonight's question cleanly. Will anything with our name on it ever visit the center of the galaxy? Not on any calendar that means anything to a human being. The center is, for us, a place in the same way the Ice Age is a place. Real, formative, ours, and permanently on the far side of a distance called time. One last machine belongs in this act, the dreamiest one because we've talked about it on other nights. The light sail. No engine, no fuel. Just a vast mirror-thin sheet, pushed by a beam of light fired from home. The one propulsion trick that escapes the tyranny of carrying your own fuel. On paper, sails are our best hope of ever reaching the nearest stars, and the paper versions are glorious, crossing to that grain of sand in the next town within a generation. So, the honest question, does the sail change tonight's sentence? Run it. Take the most outrageous sail anyone has sketched. Hold it at a serious fraction of light speed the entire way. Ignore every engineering agony. Grant the dream in full. The center is still tens of thousands of years away. The crew that arrives, if crew there could be, would be separated from the crew that launched by more time than separates you from the cave painters. And notice the quieter problem underneath. The beam that pushes the sail travels at light speed. So even the push itself, the instruction from home, takes 26,000 years to follow them all the way in. Past a certain distance, home can't even help anymore. The sail outruns every possible rescue, every update, every goodbye. The galaxy permits the trip. It just prices it in generations, and the price doesn't care how clever the ship is. Even our dreams, fully granted, arrive as strangers. It's worth knowing how that record speed was even reached, because there's a lovely irony folded into it. The record holder doesn't have a mighty engine. It has a clever fall. The probe was flung inward, not outward, looping again and again past Venus, each pass bending it closer to the sun. And every dive converts the fall into blistering speed, the way a child on a swing pumps a little higher each arc. Humanity's fastest object ever is, in other words, a thing falling downhill toward our own star, using the solar system's own gravity as the slope. Even our record is borrowed. And you might be wondering about the dream machines. The ones on paper, the starships. Suppose we someday build the wildest serious design anyone has drawn and reach 1/10 of the speed of light. A pace that would cross from the Earth to the Moon in 13 seconds. Downtown is still 250,000 years away. A wait about 40 times longer than civilization has existed. Push all the way to almost the speed of light itself, and something stranger happens. For the crew aboard, time itself would slow, and the crossing might pass in decades of ship time. But for Earth, for everyone waving at the dock, the trip still takes the full 26,000 years. Because that's simply what the distance costs at light speed. No discounts, no exceptions. The travelers could reach downtown within their own lives. They could never again reach ours. Whatever they found there, the finding would come home to a world 26,000 years older. A foreign planet wearing a familiar name. The distance doesn't only defeat engines, it quietly unpicks the meaning of arriving. And you might think, fine, we can't ride there, but surely we could call. This is where the distance shows you its manners. Because the universe does have a telephone, and it works flawlessly, and it's useless here. A radio message travels at exactly the speed of light, so send a hello toward the center tonight, and it arrives in 26,000 years. Suppose, by some miracle, something is there to hear it, and answers at once. The reply lands on Earth 52,000 years from now. Hold that number against the human story. 52,000 years ago, we shared this planet with other kinds of human. Whole species of our cousins have appeared and vanished in less time than that single exchange of greetings. A conversation with the center isn't a conversation between people. It's a conversation between species, where each line of the dialogue is spoken by someone who never met the one who spoke last. Every civilization we can imagine, including ours, would be a different thing entirely by the second sentence. This is what the distance quietly does to every dream. Whether the dream is a starship or a phone call, it doesn't say no. The universe never says no. It just quotes you the time, and the time is longer than the thing you are. And we have, in fact, mailed exactly one serious letter to a place like this. And the story of it is a perfect little portrait of our species. Half a century ago, astronomers reopening the great radio dish at Arecibo wanted to mark the occasion. So they composed a message, a simple picture written in radio pulses, showing our counting numbers, the atoms of life, a stick figure of a human being, and a little map of the solar system with the third planet lifted slightly out of line as if raising its hand. Then they needed somewhere to send it, and they chose a globular cluster called M13, one of Shapley's moths, a glittering ball of hundreds of thousands of ancient stars hanging in the summer sky. Its distance, about 25,000 light-years. Almost exactly tonight's distance, by coincidence, a different address on the same scale of far. The message left in the 1970s at the speed of light, and it has now been flying day and night without pause for some 50 years. It has covered about 1/500th of the road. If anyone is home, the letter arrives in roughly 25,000 years, and the earliest possible reply lands 25,000 years after that. Everyone involved knew this perfectly well. They sent it anyway, a postcard addressed to the 50th millennium from a species that had owned radio for barely a lifetime. It's either the most futile thing we've ever done, or one of the most hopeful. And the lovely truth is that it's both. And everyone who signed off on it knew that too. Mostly, though, we don't talk. We listen. For decades now, radio astronomers have pointed dishes toward the crowded center, because if you must eavesdrop on a galaxy, aim at the district with the most windows. One beam toward the archer takes in millions of stars at once. And what have we heard in all those years of patient listening? Physics. Endless, gorgeous physics. The hum of hot gas, the ticking of spinning dead stars, the crackle of the black hole's untidy eating, the cold hiss of molecules in the dark clouds. The galaxy talks constantly, in the way weather talks, in the way a house talks at night. What we haven't heard, so far, is anyone talking on purpose. No structure, no greeting, no reply to anything. Is that because nobody's there, or because 26,000 years filters out everyone who won't commit 50,000 years to a single hello? Nobody knows. And tonight isn't the night we solve it. We've spent whole evenings together on that question before. For now, keep just this part. Somewhere in the archives, on magnetic tape and spinning discs, our species has stored thousands of hours of the actual voice of the galactic center. The real sound of downtown, faithfully recorded. We keep it the way you'd keep whale song or wind. Not because it says anything, because it's the house we live in, breathing, and people do listen to it, literally, for the simple human reason that we wanted to know what home sounds like. Astronomers take the center's radio recordings and translate them down into sound, mapping the data onto tones and textures an ear can hold. The results are published, and they're strangely beautiful. The hot gas around the black hole comes out as a low oceanic wash, like surf heard through a wall. The spinning dead stars tick through it, steady as clocks in another room. Flares rise and subside like wind finding a house's edges and letting go. Nothing in it is a voice, and nobody pretends otherwise. It's weather, but it's our weather. The actual acoustics of the district all our roads circle. And there's something quietly moving about a species that can't visit its own downtown. Can't see it, can't call it. And so, in the end, simply sat down and made the distance sing. If you ever find one of those recordings, save it for a night like this one. The center of the galaxy, played softly through a small speaker in a dark room. Sounds less like the void of the movies and more like a kettle warming 3 rooms away, in a very large, very old, very well-kept house. Now here's a stranger fact than any of the numbers, and it took our species embarrassingly long to notice it. We can't actually see the center at all. Not with our eyes. Not with the finest ordinary telescope ever ground. That soft glow above the teapot is the crowd around the downtown, the wide, bright bulge of it. But the true middle, the deep center itself, is hidden. Between us and it, the galaxy's disk is full of cold dust, fine dark soot drifting between the stars, and 26,000 light-years of that dust adds up to a curtain. Almost none of the center's visible light survives the crossing. For every trillion rays that set out toward us, roughly one arrives. We live inside a smoke-filled room, and the center is a fire on the far side of it. And for all of human history, every eye that ever looked that way saw only the smoke. It's worth pausing on how humbling that is. The single most important place in our galaxy, the point, the sun, and every star you've ever seen are all orbiting the middle of our own home, and no human being has ever seen it, or ever will, with their own eyes. The distance was never just long, it's long and veiled. Whatever we were going to learn about the center, we were going to learn it blind. The smoke itself deserves a kind word before we outwit it, because it isn't dirt on the window. It's ash from the family fires. The dust between the stars is soot and fine mineral grit blown out by dying stars, generations of them. The same slow rain of ash that salted the galaxy with the makings of rocky planets and iron blood and you. Every grain of it is a fleck of some ancestor star's last act. There's so little of it per breath of space that a single cubic kilometer of the road downtown holds barely a pinch. But tonight's road is 26,000 light-years long, and a pinch per kilometer, summed over a road like that, closes like a curtain. Here's a way to feel it. Imagine the beam as a traveler walking through an endless series of nearly empty rooms, each room holding one mote of dust. No single room troubles it, but there are so many rooms that by the end of the walk, for visible light, almost nothing gets through. One ray in a trillion, the glow of a bonfire reduced to less than a firefly. Or hang it in your own hallway. Imagine one thin gauze curtain for every 1,000 light-years of the road. Each curtain alone is nothing. You'd read a book through it, but the road hangs 26 of them, one behind another, and a candle seen through 26 veils is not a dim candle. It's gone. That's all the galaxy did to hide its own heart from us. No wall, no door, no darkness even, just gauze and patience and enough hallway. If the dust vanished tonight, astronomers say the galaxy's center would hang in our southern sky as a glowing oval many times the size of the full moon, bright enough to notice from a city a permanent second twilight, rising every summer evening. Every generation of humans that ever lived slept under that hidden spectacle and never knew. It's still there, right now, behind the veil, shining at your street with all its might, and the ash of the old stars catches nearly every ray. The ancestors dimming the ancestral city as if to let the suburbs sleep. There's a second keyhole through that smoke, by the way, gentler than radio. And you already own the receiver for it. Warmth, light stretched a little past red. The invisible glow every warm thing gives off slips between the soot grains, far better than visible light does. Where the eye gets one ray in a trillion, the warmth cameras get a healthy fraction through. That's the window the great infrared telescopes use. The same stretched light our new Golden Space Telescope was built to read, and it's the window through which the center's individual stars were finally photographed one by one. Think about what that means for a moment. The center of the galaxy has never been seen, but it has been felt. The way you feel a fire through a closed door with your palm flat on the wood. All those crisp, modern images of the galactic heart, the swirls and the star swarms, are maps of heat, translated into pictures a human eye can use. We never opened the door. We learned to read the warmth coming under it. And the warmth told us everything. How many stars? How fast? How close? How strange. Keep that little fact for cold nights. The deepest secrets of our galaxy came to us the same way comfort does. As heat through a barrier. Patient, faithful, and exactly the same temperature as the truth, and blind is exactly how we found it, which is one of the loveliest detective stories in all of science. 2 centuries ago, the great telescope builder, William Herschel, tried to map the galaxy by simply counting stars, patch of sky by patch of sky, reasoning that the direction with the most stars must run deepest. Counting through the smoke, he got roughly equal numbers everywhere, and concluded, quite sensibly, that we were at the center of everything. The smoke made the room look the same in every direction, so the counter assumed he stood in the middle of it. The error survived for over a century. Then, in the early 1900s, a young American astronomer named Harlow Shapley found a way to see over the smoke instead of through it. Scattered around our galaxy, above and below the flat smoky disk, hang hundreds of globular clusters, dense glittering balls of ancient stars, each holding hundreds of thousands of suns. Because they float above the plane of the dust, we can see them clearly, the way you can see lanterns hung high over a foggy town square. Shapley measured the distance to cluster after cluster and marked each one on a map. And the map came back lopsided. The clusters weren't spread evenly around us at all. They swarmed, overwhelmingly, around one point deep in the constellation of the Archer, the one the star maps call Sagittarius, right where the teapot steams. Clusters swarm the galaxy's center the way moths swarm a porch light. Shapley couldn't see the light, but he could see the moths. So he drew the center where the swarm pointed, far from the sun. And in one stroke of reasoning, humanity got demoted from the middle of the galaxy to the quiet outer suburbs by a man mapping something he could not see. How did he know how far each moth was, though? That's the quiet hinge of the whole trick, and it's worth a sentence. Because it comes back at the end of tonight. Inside those clusters live a special kind of star that pulses, swelling and fading on a steady beat. And the beat gives away the star's true brightness. Slow blinkers burn bright. Fast blinkers burn faint. Know a lamp's true brightness. Compare it with how faint it looks, and the distance falls out. The way you judge how far a car is at night by how dim its headlights have gotten. That rule, the blink that tells the wattage, had been discovered just a few years earlier by a quiet astronomer working through photographs at Harvard. A woman whose name you'll hear again before we're done, because her little ruler ends up measuring more than anyone dreamed. Shapley took her rule and walked it out into the dark, cluster by cluster, moth by moth. It's a lovely thing to notice about the whole night, actually. Every distance in it, every single one, traces back to somebody noticing a pattern in something small, a blink, a hiss, a sway. Nobody has ever measured the galaxy with anything but patience and arithmetic, applied to whispers. Shapley himself is worth a minute, because the man who found the center of the galaxy got into astronomy by accident, alphabetically. He was a Missouri farm boy who left school young and worked as a crime reporter in rough oil towns, saving up to study journalism. When he finally arrived at the university, the journalism program's opening had been delayed, so he opened the course catalog to pick something else, starting from the front. He liked to tell the story that he couldn't pronounce the first subject on the list, archaeology, so he took the second one, astronomy. The whole demotion of the sun, the porch light, and the moths, the modern map of our galaxy, all of it downstream of one farm kid running his finger down an alphabetical list, and he stayed exactly that kind of person all his life. At the great observatory in California where he did the famous work, colleagues would find him crouched beside the trails on the mountain, timing ants with a stopwatch. He'd noticed the ants ran faster in warm weather, so he worked out their speed at different temperatures, carefully, seriously, until he could tell you the temperature by clocking an ant, and he published it in between papers relocating humanity within the galaxy. That's the temperament that measures the unseeable. Not grandeur, curiosity with a stopwatch, pointed at whatever moves, whether it's an ant on a warm rock or a swarm of star cities circling a hidden light 26,000 years away. His first number, it's worth saying, was too big. Shapley called the distance around 50,000 light-years, roughly double the truth, because the dust he was working around still dimmed his measuring stars in ways nobody yet understood. And dimmer looks farther. It didn't matter. The direction was right. The demotion was right. And the number spent the next century being argued downward, refined by better rulers and cleaner tricks, to the value we hold now, about 26,000 light-years, known at last to within a whisker. There's something worth keeping in that arc. The measurement of tonight's distance wasn't a single stroke of genius. It was a 100-year argument, conducted politely, in journals, across generations of careful people, each one sanding a little error off the number the last one left behind. Nobody alive today remembers a time when we didn't know roughly where the center was, but your great-grandparents were alive when we learned it at all. Then came the accident. And it's the kind of story astronomy does best. The kind where the universe taps someone on the shoulder who wasn't even looking. In the early 1930s, a young engineer named Carl Jansky was working for a telephone company. Transatlantic radio calls were full of hiss and crackle, and his job was gloriously unglamorous. Find the sources of the static. So, in a field in New Jersey, he built a strange contraption. A long skeleton of antennas mounted on 4 wheels taken from an old car. The whole thing slowly turning in circles so it could sniff the horizon in every direction. His colleagues called it Jansky's merry-go-round. He catalogued the crackle of nearby thunderstorms, the fizz of distant ones, and then he hit a third thing, a faint, steady hiss, very quiet, that rose and fell once a day, as if something were passing overhead. At first he assumed the Sunday, but the hiss kept drifting. It peaked 4 minutes earlier each day. And that small slippage is the fingerprint of something beyond the solar system, because that's exactly how the stars keep time. The stars rise 4 minutes earlier every night. The sun doesn't. Whatever was hissing rose and set with the stars. Jansky chased the peak across the calendar, and it pointed, unmistakably, at the constellation of the Archer, at the teapot, at the very spot where Shapley's moths had swarmed, the center of the galaxy, hidden behind its smoke for the whole of human history, turned out to be humming, and the first creature on Earth ever to hear it was a phone engineer looking for static. Sit with what happened there. because it's the hinge of the entire story. The dust that blinds us is only a curtain for visible light. Radio waves are light too, just stretched enormously long, and waves that long slide between the soot grains, the way ocean swells roll past a fishing float. The smoke that no eye can pierce is glass to a radio wave, which meant the universe had left us a keyhole. Jansky found it by accident, a whole new kind of astronomy born from a telephone complaint. The phone company, satisfied that the hiss wasn't fixable and wasn't their problem, moved him to other work, and he never followed his own discovery. It took years. And one obsessive radio amateur named Grote Reber building a dish in his mother's back garden in Illinois, before anyone mapped the sky's hum properly. But from that keyhole grew everything we now know about the center. Because after radio came other stretched kinds of light. The warm glow of infrared, the kind Webb reads, also walks through the dust, and so do X-rays. One by one, the curtains that had hidden downtown since before our species existed simply stopped mattering. And the hiss itself, in time, was given a name. And the name is the one you already know. Radio astronomers labeled the loudest voice in the Archer by its address, Sagittarius A. Decades later, when they finally pinned the true tiny source hiding at the heart of all that noise, they added a small star to the label, the way you'd mark the one door that matters on a crowded street. Sagittarius A star. Tonight's whole destination is named after the static. A phone company decided wasn't worth fixing. We never got to see the center. We learned to hear it, and then to feel its heat, and what was waiting there at the bottom of 26,000 years of dark turned out to be stranger than anybody had dared to put in print. Spare a thought for the two listeners themselves, because the epilogue is bittersweet and lovely. Jansky wanted to keep going. He proposed a bigger antenna to follow the cosmic hiss properly. And the phone company, reasonably enough by its own lights, declined, because the static couldn't be fixed and therefore wasn't a problem. He was assigned to other work, and he died young, at 44, just before the science he'd accidentally founded came roaring to life. For years, the only radio astronomer on Earth was Grote Reber, the radio amateur who'd read Jansky's papers and simply refused to let the discovery sit. Reber built a 9-meter dish, by hand, from wood and sheet metal, in his mother's back garden in a small town in Illinois, where the neighbors could only guess at its purpose. He observed in the small hours of the night, because by day the spark of every passing car's engine crackled through his receiver, and he mapped the radio sky alone, at his own expense, for a decade, the entire worldwide field of radio astronomy, consisting of one man, awake at 3 in the morning, in his mother's garden. His maps showed the same bright hum in the Archer, and in time the professionals followed him into the new sky he and Jansky had opened. And here's the detail worth falling asleep on. Radio astronomers measure the brightness of every cosmic whisper in a unit called the Jansky. The man who was told the hiss wasn't worth pursuing is now the word for it. Every discovery the great dishes have ever made, every map of the center, is written in Jansky's, so his name is spoken, gently and daily, in every radio observatory on Earth, a unit of measurement shaped like an apology. So let's go downtown, the way the stretched light lets us, and look around, because the neighborhood at the bottom of tonight's distance is unlike anywhere else in the galaxy. Out here in the suburbs, stars are those grains of sand with towns between them. Our sun's nearest neighbor is 4 years away, at light speed, and that's normal for our street. Downtown, the packing changes completely. In the galaxy's central regions, stars crowd hundreds of thousands of times closer together than they do here. If Earth orbited a star near the center, your night sky would be unrecognizable. Thousands of stars would shine brighter than anything in our sky short of the moon, a ceiling of lamps in every direction, dense enough to read by. There would be no true darkness there, ever. No black between the lights, no faint river of Milky Way, because you wouldn't be looking at the city from the suburbs anymore. You'd be standing in the middle of it, under the chandeliers. Picture bedtime on a world like that, just for the strangeness of it. The sun sets, and nothing much changes. Thousands of stars, each outshining anything in our sky, hold the land in a permanent silver dusk. You could read by it. Trees, if there were trees, would cast faint, crisscross shadows in a dozen directions at once, because there is no single brightest light to own the night. No moon would matter. No dawn would surprise anyone. Children there would learn the word darkness the way our children learn the word blizzard as a thing that exists elsewhere, in stories, and they would never, ever see out. Not the river of the galaxy, which is everywhere around them and therefore invisible. The way you can't see a forest from inside a leaf pile. Not the neighbor galaxies, not the deep universe. Their astronomy would be a magnificent study of their own blazing street. And the great cold questions: how big is everything? How old? How far? Might sit unasked for the whole history of their kind, washed out by the porch lights. Would you trade skies with them? A ceiling of chandeliers, in exchange for the black window and everything it shows? Hold the question loosely as you drift. It has no wrong answer. But notice that you'd be trading away the very thing you're using right now, which is a night dark enough to think in. Astronomers mean it literally when they say night, as we know it, is a suburban luxury. And the crowding isn't just bright, it's busy. Stars downtown pass close by one another constantly, by cosmic standards, tugging at each other's planets and comet clouds as they go. Our solar system keeps a vast, quiet halo of sleeping comets at its edge, barely held, easily disturbed. Downtown, a neighborhood like that gets rattled again and again. It's a gorgeous place, the center. Nobody serious thinks it's a gentle one. Let's make the approach properly, though, because a distance this long deserves to be traveled, not skipped. Ride the Beams Road in reverse, outbound from your window, downtown, for the first 1,000 light years. Home country. The stars you know, spaced like grains of sand, with towns between them, then thousands of years of the same, star after star, nursery after nursery, the great spiral streets sliding past, each one a slow river of suns. Somewhere along the way you cross lanes of the dark soot, whole regions where the sky ahead blanks out. And then you break through, and the light thickens. The stars begin arriving closer together. The towns between the sand grains shrink to villages, then to streets, then to rooms. You pass into the galaxy's great central swell, the fried egg yolk rising off the plate, where the stars are old and golden and everywhere. And the deeper you go, the faster everything moves around you, stars swinging past on tight, quick orbits, the whole neighborhood humming like a fairground at night. In the last few light years, the crowding becomes something no suburban sky could teach you to imagine. Thousands of suns packed into the space that holds one back home, blazing in every direction. Above, below, all around, a sphere of ceaseless light. And then, at the very middle of the middle, at the bottom of every orbit, the crowd suddenly thins. There's a clearing. The innermost stars swing wide around it, the way birds curve around something standing in a field. At the center of the clearing sits the resident everything else has been circling all along. And it is the one thing on the whole road that gives no light at all. And in the very middle of all that crowding sits the strangest resident of our galaxy. And we found it by watching stars run. From the late 90s on, two teams of astronomers, one led by Andrea Ghez in California, one by Reinhard Genzel in Germany, pointed their best infrared telescopes through the keyhole at the exact center and simply watched, year after year after year. Neither team could have done it a decade earlier, and the reason why is its own small marvel. Air. The same sky that feeds you blurs every telescope on Earth, the stars shimmering the way a coin shimmers at the bottom of a pool. To watch single stars downtown, through the smoke, in a crowd that dense, the blur had to be defeated. So both teams' observatories learned a trick called adaptive optics. A laser paints an artificial star high in the atmosphere. Sensors read how the air is smearing it hundreds of times each second, and a thin, flexible mirror in the telescope's heart bends itself continuously exactly opposite to the smearing, unblurring the sky in real time. A mirror that ripples like water on purpose, faster than your pulse, so that a star 26,000 light-years away can hold still in the frame. That's what it costs to look downtown properly. Not bigger glass, nimbler glass. What they saw, when the frames were stacked into decades, still gives astronomers a particular feeling in the chest. A handful of stars there are moving, not drifting the way stars politely drift, but whipping, visibly, around a single point of nothing. One of them, a bright young star the catalogues call by a short plain name, swings around that point once every 16 years. And at the bottom of its swing, it moves at almost 3% of the speed of light, the fastest orbit of any star we've ever clocked. Picture that, a whole sun, thousands of times heavier than the Earth, cracking around a bend in the dark like a skater rounding a post, and the post is invisible. Think about what watching that actually took in human terms. The skater's lap takes 16 years. To trace one full orbit, you must point at the same crowded patch, through the same smoke, season after season, for longer than most careers last. Both teams did, and then kept going. Students who joined the project fresh out of university had grey in their hair before the loop closed. Some of the founders watched the second lap begin in retirement. The data itself is almost comically humble. A handful of dots on a dark frame, plotted year by year. Each dot a season of mountain nights, laser corrections, and stubborn bookkeeping. Pin the dots to a wall in order, and they curve. Keep pinning and the curve commits. It's an ellipse. Anyone who has ever plotted anything feels that moment in the spine. An ellipse means an orbit means a mass, and the dots, patiently, over decades, drew the outline of something no light will ever leave. There was no eureka night. There was a slow tightening of certainty, meeting by meeting, dot by dot, until one year, the only honest sentence left was the enormous one. That's how the biggest facts usually arrive, for what it's worth, not as lightning, as bookkeeping that refuses, year after year, to say anything else. From the way the stars fly, you can weigh the thing they're all avoiding. And the answer comes out a little over 4 million times the mass of our sun, packed into a region smaller than our solar system, shining with almost no light of its own. The skater star gave one more gift on its way past, and it deserves telling. When it made its closest approach, a few years back, the teams were ready. If the invisible thing is truly what physics says, then a star grazing that deep into its gravity should have its light stretched by the fall, reddened by a precise, tiny amount that Einstein's arithmetic wrote down a century before anyone could check it. The star swung through, the light stretched, the amount matched. A prediction made by a man with chalk, before radio astronomy existed, was graded 26,000 light-years from his blackboard, at the bottom of our galaxy, and it passed. There's only one thing in physics that can be that heavy, that small, and that dark. The center of our galaxy, the point everything you've ever seen is slowly circling, is a supermassive black hole. It's the one we set out for at the start of tonight. Sagittarius A star. The old radio hiss finally shown its true face, and the two team leaders who proved what it was shared a Nobel Prize for the patience. And a few years ago, a planet-wide web of radio dishes, working as one instrument, managed the impossible and took its picture. Dishes in the high deserts of Chile, on volcanoes in Hawaii, in Spain, in Mexico, at the South Pole itself, all recorded the same faint radio light at the same moment, their clocks kept by atomic precision, and the recordings were flown together and combined into the view of a single virtual telescope the size of Earth. It needed to be that size. Photographing our central black hole from here is like photographing a single grain of salt in another city. The picture that emerged, after years of processing, is soft and strange and instantly readable. A ring of glowing orange around a perfect circle of nothing, 26,000 years of distance, and at the bottom of it, a held breath. The heart of our galaxy is a locked door with 4 million suns behind it. And in case a 4 million sun black hole sounds like a monster loose in the house, you should know its actual manners, because they're surprisingly good. Our galaxy's central black hole is, by the standards of its kind, on a diet. Some galaxies' centers blaze like beacons, their black holes gorging on rivers of infalling gas, shining brighter than all their stars combined, visible across the universe. Ours dozes. It sips. The gas available to it at the moment is thin, and so it glows faintly, flickering a little from day to day like a banked fire settling, which is part of why it took so long to find. Every so often, astronomers watch a knot of gas or a badly steered star swing near, and the whole community leans in, and mostly the visitor swings past, roughed up but intact, and the quiet resumes. It has flared before, and the way we know is worth a slow breath, because it's time travel done with mirrors. Light from an old flare doesn't only come straight at us. Some of it goes sideways, strikes the great gas clouds that surround the center, and bounces, arriving here years or centuries after the direct light, the way an echo arrives after a shout. Astronomers reading the X-ray glow of those clouds found them lit up in a pattern that made no sense for today's dozing black hole, but perfect sense as an echo. A couple of centuries ago, give or take, while people down here were building canals and writing symphonies, our black hole had a loud season, blazing many times brighter than now, and the echo of that meal is still washing outward across the clouds, a shout still bouncing around the room after the voice has gone quiet. Someday, in some distant season, a real meal will wander in, and the center will brighten again, in a way no living sky has seen. But there's no menace in this for you, and it's worth saying plainly why. The black hole doesn't hunt. It doesn't pull the galaxy in. Its grip at our distance is no different from that of any 4 million ordinary suns standing in the same spot. Which is to say, it holds us on our calm circular road and asks nothing else. We don't orbit a threat. We orbit a very heavy, very tidy landlord who keeps to one room and has never once climbed the stairs. It's fair to ask how we can possibly know tonight's distance so exactly when nobody can see the place. And the answer has a quiet beauty of its own. You measure it the way a surveyor measures a far mountain, with a triangle. As Earth swings around the sun each year, our viewpoint shifts, and nearby things seem to sway against the far background. The way your finger sways against the wall when you blink between eyes. The sway shrinks with distance, and for the center it's absurdly small, far too fine for any ordinary telescope. So astronomers built an extraordinary one. They taught several giant telescopes on a mountaintop in Chile to combine their light into one virtual instrument the size of the whole mountaintop. And with it they tracked that fastest star, the 16-year skater, along its entire orbit, meter by meter, year by year. An orbit is a shape of known geometry. Watch it edge on. Measure how fast the star truly moves against how wide its path merely looks, and the distance falls out like a solved crossword. The current answer is about 26,500 light-years, and the measurement is good to a fraction of 1%, which, for a distance no one can see across, through a room full of smoke, to a door nobody can open, is one of the quiet triumphs of our species. Your ancestors watched that glow above the teapot and called it the backbone of the night. You get to know what it is and how far. To a whisker, because a few hundred careful people spent their lives on a triangle. It's worth one slow look at the instrument that finally did it, because it's among the most delicate things our species has ever made work. On a high, dry mountaintop in Chile stand 4 giant telescopes, each with a mirror wider than a bus. On the nights they hunt the center, their light is guided down through tunnels beneath the mountain and braided together, matched to within a wavelength, so the 4 act as a single virtual eye as wide as the whole plateau. Combining light that way means holding 4 beams steady to a precision far finer than a human hair, while the machines themselves swing and track, tunnels breathing, mirrors trembling with the mountain's own faint shiver. Everything corrected hundreds of times a second. The reward for that fanaticism is vision sharp enough to watch a single star, 26,000 light-years away, move against the sky by an angle about as small as a coin lying on the moon looks from Earth. That's the sway they measure. A coin, on the moon, watched from your garden, year after year, through the smoke, at the bottom of the galaxy. When people say the distance to the center is known to a fraction of a percent, that sentence is carried by tunnels under a mountain in Chile, by servo motors making corrections faster than your heartbeat, and by the patience of teams who pointed at the same faint star for decades. Precision like that isn't cold. Up close, it's devotion, of the same family as lighthouse keeping and clockmaking and sitting up with a sick child. Humans decided the distance mattered, and then they refused for 30 years to stop measuring it. And that exactness buys one more strange gift. Since we know the distance, we know the delay, which means we know exactly which universe we're looking at. Tonight's view of the center is a delivery from the deep ice age. If something dramatic happened downtown this century, no one on Earth will know for 26,000 years. There could be news already on its way, a flare, a swallowed star, some once-in-a-million-years event, crossing the dark toward your grandchildren's grandchildren 1,000 generations out. Astronomy is the only science where the male is this old and everyone has simply made peace with it. When astronomers say the center is quiet, they mean it was quiet during the Ice Age. The present tense of our own galaxy's heart is a thing no living human will ever hold. Distance, at this scale, isn't just space. It's a one-way window into time, and the pain is 26,000 years thick. Since we know the road so well now, let's read its itinerary. Because the beam didn't cross a featureless dark. Our galaxy's disk is built of great spiral arms, slow rivers of stars and glowing gas, and the light from the center had to ford several of them to reach you. It set out from the crowded bar, crossed the inner arms where new stars are being born by the 1,000, threaded long lanes of the black soot, past nurseries that have since grown up and funerals that have since finished, and came at last into our own modest neighborhood. Because here's a fact that makes the address on your mail slightly more precise. The sun doesn't ride one of the great arms at all. We live in a smaller side street between them, a partial arm astronomers call the Orion Spur, a quiet lane off the main rivers, and we're currently drifting through an unusually empty pocket of that lane, a bubble of thin, hot gas blown clear by ancient stellar deaths, which local astronomers, with the dry poetry of their kind, simply call the local bubble. So the full address reads like this. The local bubble, the Orion Spur, the quiet ring between the arms, the Milky Way, 26,000 light-years from downtown. Say it once and feel how it lands. You have an address in the galaxy. It's a real one. And the light from the center found it tonight without a single wrong turn. Meanwhile, don't let anyone tell you that you're sitting still. Because the other side of tonight's story is that we are, right now, in motion around that locked door. The sun, with all its planets in its pockets, is falling around the galaxy's center at about 230 kilometers every second. That's not a gentle number. It means that since you settled into bed, this whole neighborhood, your house, your street, the moon, the sun itself, has traveled tens of thousands of kilometers around the galaxy. In the half hour it might take you to fall asleep tonight, will cover the distance from the Earth to the Moon. You've never once felt it. Because everything you love is falling together at the same speed, in the same silence, and motion you can't compare against anything is indistinguishable from rest. But add up that speed and the size of the orbit, and you get a number worth keeping for the rest of your life. One lap, one single trip around the center, takes about 225 million years. That's a galactic year. The Sun has completed the circuit maybe 20 times in its whole life. And the last time it was here, on this side of the track, in this stretch of the long dark road, the dinosaurs were young. The entire age of the dinosaurs, their rise, their 160 million year reign, and their ending fits inside a single one of these laps, with room to spare. Every human being who has ever lived, every pyramid and cathedral and radio telescope, all of it has happened in a fraction of 1% of one galactic year. We are not old residents of this city. We moved in, cosmically speaking, over the weekend. And the Sun's road isn't even the tidy circle the word orbit suggests. Our star porpoises as it goes, rising gently above the galaxy's flat plane and sinking back through it, over and over. Tens of millions of years per bob. A slow dolphin swimming a slow sea. It drifts nearer the center and farther again by small amounts each lap. Some astronomers suspect, from the chemistry of the Sun compared with its current neighbors, that it wasn't even born out here, that it formed thousands of light years closer to the crowded middle and migrated outward over the eons, nudged along by the slow churn of the spiral arms. An immigrant to these quiet suburbs, like nearly everyone else's family, in every suburb everywhere. The argument isn't settled, and it may not be for a long time, because reconstructing a 4.5 billion year commute from today's traffic is genuinely hard. But hold the image loosely, and it's a warm one. The solar system as a family that moved out of the city long ago, kept the old recipes, and settled somewhere with more room. And meanwhile, every star you can see is on its own road too. The constellations are a snapshot of traffic. The Hunter, the Teapot, the Sisters, all of them are drifting apart and along, and in 100,000 years, the sky will have rearranged itself into shapes with no names yet. The stars only look permanent for the same reason the center only looks close. You're seeing one instant of something enormous. From inside it, at the speed of a single human life. Here's one more way to hold the galactic year, and it might be the gentlest clock in the universe. Ask how old the galaxy is, not in years, but in its own laps. The Milky Way has existed for around 13 billion years. One full turn takes roughly 250 million. Divide, and you get a number small enough to sit on your nightstand. Our galaxy, in its entire existence, has rotated about 60 times. 60. Everything it is, the arms, the bar, the 100 billion settled orbits, the whole vast composed machine of it, was achieved in 60 turns of the wheel. A carousel manages 60 turns in 20 minutes, and on the ticking of that great slow clock, all of life on Earth has happened inside the last 18 or so strokes, and everything with a backbone inside the last 2, and everything human inside a sliver of the current stroke too thin to draw. When people call the universe old, this is the strange truth underneath. It's old in years, and young in events. Hardly anything, at the grand scale, has actually happened yet. The wheel has barely started turning. You're not living at the tired end of the universe's story. You're living in its first hour, among its first creatures, under a sky that is, by its own reckoning, brand new. Here's one more consequence of all that motion, and it's a strange lullaby of a fact. You have never slept in the same place twice, not once. The spot in space where you fell asleep last night is far behind us now. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers back along the Sun's road, and nothing will ever occupy it again in quite the same arrangement. The orbit doesn't loop back like a train line. The center itself is moving. The whole galaxy is sailing. So the sun's path through the universe isn't a circle. It's a spiral drawn on a moving page, a corkscrew through the dark that never crosses itself. Every bedtime of your life has happened at a brand new address in the cosmos. Each one visited exactly once, never before and never again. Tonight's is being visited now. By morning, it will be tens of thousands of kilometers astern, holding, forever, one quiet fact in its ledger, that a person once slept there, warmly, through the whole visit. There's no way to mark these places, and no need. But it does mean that sleep, which feels like the stillest thing you do, is the thing you do while traveling hardest. And that every night of rest is, on the true map, an expedition. You're not turning in, you're setting out. You just get to do it lying down. Now we've reached the turn in the night, because everything so far, the Ice Age light, the 40-million-year cruise, the conversation between species, all of that describes the distance to the middle of our own home. And here's the sentence the whole episode has been walking toward. In the atlas of the universe, tonight's distance is a short one. It's the distance from your bedroom to your own kitchen, measured inside your own house. The moment you step outside the Milky Way, the numbers don't grow, they detonate. Our galaxy's nearest large neighbor is the Andromeda Galaxy, another vast city of perhaps 1 trillion stars. It's the farthest thing a human eye can see unaided, a faint smudge on dark autumn nights. And it hangs about 2.5 million light-years away. Measure that in tonight's units, and it comes out to nearly 100 galactic center distances, laid end to end. The light from Andromeda that lands in your eye tonight is 100 times older than the light from our own downtown. It left before our species existed. When those photons started falling toward your street, nobody on Earth had ever lit a fire, told a story, or had a name, because the kinds of creature that do those things hadn't happened yet. The entire journey from the first chipped stone tools to you, under your blanket, listening to a voice describe the galaxy, all of it fits inside the flight time of the light currently arriving from our nearest neighbor. And Andromeda is the house next door. You can meet the neighbor yourself, and it's worth doing once in your life. On a moonless autumn night, in the north, away from town lights, find the great square of 4 stars riding high, then follow the little chain of stars trailing from its corner and look just above the second link. If the night is dark enough, and your eyes have had 10 minutes to open properly, you'll catch it. A small, soft, elongated smudge, like a fingerprint of light on the black, or a breath on cold glass. It doesn't look like much. That's the point. That whisper is an entire galaxy, 1 trillion suns with all their worlds and storms and, for all anyone knows, all their sleepers, compressed by distance into something dimmer than the faintest star near it. It is the farthest thing a human eye can see unaided, the absolute edge of your body's own reach. And when you find it, you'll be doing the deepest act of seeing your species can perform without tools. One more thing about the neighbor, since we're being honest all night. Andromeda and the Milky Way are drifting toward each other, and in 4 or 5 billion years, the two cities will meet and, over further ages, merge into one. It sounds like a catastrophe. It will be the gentlest collision imaginable. The stars inside galaxies are so absurdly spaced, those sand grains with towns between them, that when 2 whole galaxies pass through one another, essentially no 2 stars ever touch. Emptiness that deep can't even crash properly. The 2 houses will simply fold together, room passing through room, and become one larger house of stars, with one shared, brand new downtown. And allow yourself the mirror image, because it's irresistible. Somewhere in Andromeda tonight, if worlds like ours are common, someone may be lying in the dark after a long day, looking up at a small elongated smudge in their sky, the farthest thing their eyes can catch. That smudge is us. The entire Milky Way, the teapot and the center and the bar, Shapley's moths and Jansky's hiss, every porch light and every sleeper all of it compressed by 2.5 million light-years into a faint breath of glow above somebody else's rooftops. Their astronomers would know our galaxy the way ours know theirs, as a lovely neighbor, mapped in patient detail, forever out of reach. Their light arriving here left before humans existed, our light arriving there left before their now, whatever their now holds, by exactly as much. Neither side can ever visit, or call, or wave in any way that arrives in time to matter. And yet, the two houses have been exchanging light without pause for billions of years, each one hanging in the other's autumn sky, faithfully, like portraits in facing halls, two porch lights, looking at each other across the dark. If that's not company, it's the nearest thing to company the universe issues at this scale, and tonight, it's enough. And the space in between the houses deserves a minute of honest awe, because the gulf between galaxies is the emptiest thing that exists. The space between stars, out here in our suburbs, holds about one atom in every sugar cube of volume, which is already a vacuum beyond anything our laboratories can make. The space between galaxies is 1,000,000 times emptier than that. Out in the middle of the crossing, a volume the size of a cathedral might hold a few dozen atoms, drifting alone, each one centuries from its nearest neighbor by walking pace. There's nothing to see there. Not darkness the way your bedroom is dark, full of furniture and air and the faint glow under the door, but darkness with nothing in it. No dust to catch a beam, no up, no down, no landmark, no direction that means anything, for 1,000,000 years of light travel in every direction. If you could stand there, impossibly, and look back, the Milky Way would be a soft coin of light in one direction, Andromeda a soft coin in the other, and everything else in existence would be faint smudges scattered across a black deeper than any night you've ever stood in. And yet the light crosses it, on schedule, unbothered. And there's a secret about that crossing, which might be the strangest gentle fact in all of physics. Ask what the journey is like for the light itself. 26,000 years for the center's glow, 2.5 million for Andromeda's. What an ordeal, what patience. Except that's our clock talking. Relativity says that the faster something moves, the slower its own time runs, and at the speed of light itself, the effect goes all the way. For the photon, if a photon could keep a diary, no time passes at all. None. Departure and arrival are, from the light's own point of view, the same moment. The beam that left the center during the Ice Age didn't endure 26,000 years of empty dark. It experienced nothing between the surface of a far star and the back of your eye, as if the universe folded and the two touched. All the waiting happens on our side of the equation. The distance is real, the years are real, but they're ours, kept by the one standing still. The traveler skips the road entirely, so when tonight's light lands on your street, it arrives unaged, unweathered, exactly as young as the moment it left the downtown fire. The oldest thing that will touch your roof tonight is also, in its own honest ledger, newborn. And the strangest part is that this nothing is the normal thing. Add up the universe honestly and the galaxies are rounding errors, bright dust on an ocean of dark. Most of the universe, by an overwhelming margin, is exactly this. Silent, starless, and wide beyond language. Astronomers even have a name for the largest of the nothings. They're called voids, and they are the true continents of the cosmos. When the first big galaxy surveys mapped the universe in 3 dimensions, everyone expected galaxies scattered more or less evenly, like dust in a sunbeam. What the maps showed instead was a sponge. Galaxies gather along vast glowing threads and sheets, and between the threads open enormous rounded hollows, tens of millions of light years across, with almost nothing inside. One of the most famous, out in the direction of a small northern constellation, is so large that light needs over 300 million years to cross it, a bubble of near-perfect emptiness, thousands of times wider than tonight's whole subject. A handful of orphan galaxies float in it, and they may be the loneliest places in existence. because a sky inside a great void shows no band of light, no neighbor smudges, just a scattering of impossibly faint glimmers at the bottom of vision. An astronomer on a world like that could be forgiven for concluding the universe was empty. And one of them once put it beautifully, saying that if the Milky Way had formed in such a void, we wouldn't have learned there were other galaxies until far later in our history, because there would have been nothing nearby to notice. Emptiness that large does something odd to tonight's distance. 26,000 light-years. The uncrossable road we began with wouldn't even register as a measurement out there. It would be a rounding error in the emptiness. The width of a floorboard in an empty concert hall. Here's a bedtime puzzle that hides inside all this, and it's older than telescopes. If the universe holds trillions of galaxies, filled with more stars than sand grains on every beach on Earth, why is the night sky dark at all? Think about it honestly for a second. In an endless, unchanging universe of stars, every single line of sight from every window should eventually land on the surface of some star, near or far, the way every line of sight in a deep forest eventually lands on a tree trunk. The whole sky should blaze like noon, forever. It doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is written in everything we've learned tonight. The universe isn't endless in time. It had a beginning, and light moves at a fixed pace, so we can only receive light from shores close enough for their light to have made the trip since the start. The rest hasn't arrived, and the great stretching of space tires out the oldest light on the road, thinning it past what eyes can catch. So the darkness over your bed isn't an absence of stars. There are plenty of stars, in every direction, without exception. The darkness is distance itself, made visible. It's the size and the youth of everything, painted in black on your ceiling. People wondered about that dark for thousands of years. You get to fall asleep knowing what it is. The night is dark because the universe is young and the mail is still arriving. Here's the thing, though. A century ago, nobody knew any of that second staircase existed. When your great-grandparents were born, the Milky Way was, as far as science could tell, the entire universe. And those little smudges in the telescopes, Andromeda among them, were assumed to be small clouds of gas inside it. The argument over this was so serious that in the spring of 1920, the National Academy of Sciences in Washington staged a formal debate about it, remembered ever since as the Great Debate. On one side stood, of all people, Harlow Shapley, our hero of the moths and the porchlight, freshly famous for finding the galaxy's center. He argued the Milky Way was everything, and the spiral smudges lived inside it. The story goes that the two debaters traveled to Washington on the same train, discovered each other aboard, and spent the journey carefully discussing wildflowers and the weather and anything at all except the size of the universe, two courteous men saving the cosmos for the lectern. Against Shapley stood an astronomer named Heber Curtis, who argued the unthinkable, that each smudge was another Milky Way entirely, an island universe of its own, impossibly far beyond ours. The debate settled nothing, because neither side had the one thing that settles anything, a measurement. That arrived 3 years later, from a young astronomer named Edwin Hubble, who found, inside the Andromeda smudge, a single pulsing star, one of a special kind whose blinking rhythm gives away its true brightness. A natural lighthouse whose secret had been decoded years before by a quiet astronomer named Henrietta Leavitt. Hubble read the blink, worked the distance, and there was nothing left to argue. The smudge was another galaxy, another everything, unimaginably beyond ours. He wrote his result to Shapley, and Shapley, holding the letter, said to a colleague that this was the letter that had destroyed his universe. It's one of the most graceful defeats in the history of science. The man who moved us out of the center of the galaxy lived to watch someone else move our whole galaxy out of the center of the universe. The lesson landed twice in one lifetime. Every time we measure honestly, home gets smaller and the night gets deeper. The moment itself survives, by the way, and you can go and look at it. The discovery lives on a single photographic plate, a glass negative of the Andromeda smudge that Hubble exposed one October night. Studying it against earlier plates, he first marked the changing point of light as a nova, a new star, with a small letter N. Then he checked more plates and realized the star wasn't new. It was blinking, brightening, and fading on a steady schedule. It was one of Leavitt's lighthouses. He crossed out the N and wrote the abbreviation for variable beside it, with an exclamation mark in red. That little red scrawl, 3 letters and a stab of punctuation on a piece of glass, is the exact spot where the universe became big. And pause once on whose ruler did it, because the whole night secretly runs on her. Henrietta Leavitt was the astronomer at Harvard, half a lifetime earlier, who noticed that the blinking stars keep their honest schedule. Slow blinkers bright, fast blinkers faint. She was paid by the hour to measure star photographs and expected to keep her ideas to herself. And the idea she couldn't keep to herself became the measuring tape of the cosmos. Her rule ranged Shapley's moths and found our galaxy's center. Her rule reached into the Andromeda smudge and found the universe. One quiet person's noticing done at a desk, for pennies, ended up measuring first the home, then the neighborhood, then everything. She didn't live to see most of it. The tape measure outlived the hand, the way the best tools do. Before it, one galaxy, ours, alone. After it, this. Hundreds of billions of galaxies, oceans of distance, the staircase we've been climbing all night. Institutions keep that plate very carefully now. It's a strange kind of relic. Not a bone or a crown, just the recorded instant, a working person, at a telescope, on an ordinary shift, understood something enormous a moment before everyone else. And the star itself, the blinking lighthouse in Andromeda that settled the great debate, is still out there, still blinking on its same faithful schedule. 2.5 million years of dark between it and the plate it changed the world on. And it kept getting deeper, so let's climb the last flights of the staircase, gently, using tonight's distance as our ruler, 1 galactic center distance per step. Our whole galaxy, edge to edge, is about 4 rulers. Andromeda, the house next door, is nearly 100. Our local group, the little cluster of neighbors that the Milky Way and Andromeda anchor together, a few dozen galaxies mostly small and shy, spans about 400 rulers. 2 of those neighbors, by the way, are visible to southern sleepers tonight without any telescope at all, and they're worth their sentence. The Magellanic Clouds, a pair of soft glowing patches like torn-off pieces of the Milky Way, drifting alone in the southern sky. They're small satellite galaxies of ours, 6 and 8 rulers out, and sailors in the southern oceans steered by them for centuries. If you grew up under them, you grew up able to see 2 whole other galaxies with your bare eyes, and most of the human race never learns their names. And the local group is a hamlet, the nearest true city of galaxies, the great cluster in the direction of the constellation of the Maiden, holding 1,000 galaxies and more, lies about 2,000 rulers out. Our hamlet and that city, and thousands of others, all drain along invisible slopes into something larger still, a shared basin of gravity that astronomers have named with one of the loveliest words ever put on a map, Laniakea, from the Hawaiian for immeasurable heaven, a structure some 20,000 rulers across, holding 100,000 galaxies. And we're not parked in it. Measure our motion against the oldest light in the universe, the afterglow of the beginning itself, and the whole local group turns out to be sailing at hundreds of kilometers a second toward a distant crowding of mass that astronomers, decades ago, named the Great Attractor. Here's the detail that belongs in tonight's episode especially. For years, nobody could see what was pulling us. And the reason will make you smile by now. It lies almost exactly behind the disk of our own galaxy, hidden by the same soot and star glare that hid our own downtown for all of history. The smoke struck twice. Radio and infrared surveys have since traced the crowd back there, cluster upon cluster, and the accounting mostly closes. But there's something wonderfully fitting about it. Even at the grandest scale we belong to, the answer to where are we going hid behind the same veil as the answer to where is the middle of home. And past that, the pattern just continues, wall after wall, void after void, the cosmic web, until you reach the farthest distance we can see at all, the edge of the observable universe, the horizon past which light hasn't had time to reach us since the beginning. That horizon stands, in every direction from your bed, at about 1.75 million rulers, 1.75 million times tonight's distance. Every ruler of which is, itself, 26,000 years of Ice Age light. Somewhere a few steps up that staircase, the honest mind simply sits down. Astronomers will tell you, cheerfully, that they can calculate these distances but cannot picture them either. Nobody can. The universe is not obliged to fit through the doors of a brain that evolved to find fruit and avoid leopards. You're allowed to stop climbing. The numbers keep going. You don't have to. And the staircase has one property no staircase should have, which we should say once, gently, and set down. It's growing. The deep distances, the ones between the galaxy clusters, are stretching as the universe expands. The gulfs widening a little every year, not because anything is flying through space, but because space itself is unhurriedly making more of itself between the far shores. Nearby, gravity wins, and nothing changes. Our galaxy holds together. The local group holds together. Andromeda is actually coming closer, but past a certain rung on tonight's staircase, every distance you'd care to name is quietly longer than it was when this sentence started. And the farthest shores recede so steadily that their light, setting out today, will never manage the crossing at all. Some of the universe is in the process of politely leaving the conversation. Astronomers found this out about a century ago and confirmed the stranger parts within living memory. And it changes nothing about tomorrow morning and everything about the word distance. Even the atlas is a snapshot. The great map is being redrawn beneath the mapmakers at a pace that means nothing to a human night and everything to the shape of forever. If that thought feels too large, you're holding it correctly. Set it on the shelf with the others. It will keep. Everything on tonight's shelf keeps, which is the one mercy of enormous things. None of them ever need checking on before morning, which is why the last part of tonight matters most, because after all that expansion, all that demotion, all those detonating numbers, here's the turn, the distance you've been hearing about all night. The 26,000 light-years between your bed and the galaxy's blazing downtown is not a wall, it's a moat. And it may be among the reasons you exist at all. Think about what we found downtown. Crowds of stars brushing past one another, rattling each other's comet clouds. A supermassive black hole that, in its hungry seasons, floods whole regions with radiation. Stars packed so close that when one of them dies violently, its neighbors feel it. The center is glorious, and the center is harsh. And a small rocky world down there, trying to run the quiet 4 billion-year experiment that leads from chemistry to lullabies, would keep getting interrupted. Out here, at our distance, the galaxy is calm. Close passes by other stars are rare on the timescale of everything. The comet cloud sleeps. The radiation weather is mild. Many astronomers speak of a galactic habitable zone, a broad ring of quiet, not too near the crowded core, not too far into the thin outskirts where the ingredients for rocky worlds run scarce, and our sun rides almost in the middle of it, on an unusually calm, round orbit. The far edge of that argument is worth hearing too, because the moat protects in both directions. Head outward from here instead of inward, toward the galaxy's rim, and the stars thin and grow poor in the literal sense. The heavy ingredients, the iron and silicon and carbon that rocky worlds are built from, are forged by generations of stars and shared through crowded neighborhoods, and the sparse outer districts have simply seen less of that traffic. Fewer generations, less ash, thinner soil. Worlds like Earth, may be rare out there for the humblest reason imaginable. A shortage of bricks. So the address that works is a band, close enough to the center for the soil to be rich, far enough for the weather to be calm. A ring of streets where the deliveries arrive but the traffic doesn't, and the sun happens to ride near the middle of it, on one of the roundest, steadiest orbits a star can keep. The idea has its critics, and the argument continues, which is how you know it's interesting. But the shape of it is hard to unsee. The suburbs aren't where we got stuck. The suburbs may be the only district where creatures like us get to finish growing up. The distance isn't keeping you from the galaxy's heart. It's the reason there's a you to be kept. Look at the fine print of the moat, and it only gets kinder. Life's long project needs, above all, to not be interrupted. And the interruptions on offer downtown are real ones. A giant star ending its life nearby can strip a world's protective sky. A close pass by a neighbor star can shake a system's comet cloud loose and send 10 million winters' worth of icy debris falling inward. In the crowded center, statistically, such things visit a neighborhood often on the timescales life needs. Out here, they almost never do. Our sun has circled the galaxy some 20 times, 4.5 billion years through traffic, and Earth's chain of life has never once been fully broken. Rattled, yes. There have been terrible days, and some researchers have wondered whether a few of the ancient extinctions had the galaxy's fingerprints on them. A nearby stellar death. A plunge through a crowded spiral arm. Nobody knows, and honestly the case is thin. What's certain is the shape of the ledger. 4.5 billion years, 20 laps through a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, and the experiment on this one small world was never once cancelled. That's what an address in the suburbs buys. Not safety, nothing anywhere is safe, but odds. Gorgeous, long, patient odds. The kind that let a puddle of chemistry keep its notes for 4 billion years until some of the notes could read themselves. You are, among everything else you are, a lucky address. And hold the asymmetry of it for a second, because it's the closest thing tonight has to a secret meaning. The center doesn't know about us. It can't. Nothing we've ever done has registered there, and nothing ever will in any way that matters. Our radio whispers, thinning as they spread, won't brush the inner districts for thousands of years, and by then they'll be fainter than the static between the static. From downtown, the suburbs are invisible. One unremarkable smear of thin stars in the outskirts of one ordinary galaxy. The gaze runs one way. We watch the center the way a child watches a parent across a field, completely, while being, ourselves, unwatched. And yet, look what grew out here in the unwatched seats. As far as anyone can prove tonight, the crowded, blazing, magnificent middle of the galaxy contains no one who knows it's magnificent. The knowing happened in the quiet ring, on a small damp world, in creatures built from downtown's exported ash, who looked back across 26,000 years of dark and worked out the shape of the whole wheel from inside it. The center made the material, the suburbs made the witness. If a galaxy could be said to open its eyes anywhere, it wasn't at the bright heart of things. It was out here, in the cheap seats, behind the smoke, where it's dark enough to see, and the moat pays a second dividend, one you can check with your own eyes. Because we live in the quiet outskirts, our sky is dark. That sounds like a small thing. It's everything. A world downtown, under its ceiling of 1,000 brilliantha, would never know true night. No creature there could ever see out. The blaze of their own neighborhood would wash the deep universe away, the way city lights wash away the stars over a downtown apartment. And Andromeda, the great cluster in the Maiden, the whole staircase we just climbed, all of it would be invisible behind their gorgeous, crowded ceiling. They would live in the most spectacular room in the galaxy and never once see past the lamps. We got the opposite bargain. Our sky is plain. A few thousand modest stars. One pale river of light. And through that plainness, everything is visible. The darkness over your roof tonight is not an absence. It's a window. The clearest one. The galaxy issues. And it was bought for you by 26,000 light-years of distance, from the quiet, cheap seats at the edge of the room. And only from them, you can see the whole theater, which makes it gently funny and gently fixable, that most of us have papered the window over. The majority of people alive tonight, in their whole lives, have never seen the Milky Way, not because the galaxy dimmed, because we lit so many lamps of our own that the ancient river washed out of the sky over every city on Earth, and the center's glow, which survived 26,000 light-years of soot and dark, gets defeated in the last millionth of its journey by a parking lot. There's no scolding in this. None. The lamps are lovely too, and they mean nobody's alone in the dark. But if you ever want your inheritance back, it's still there, uncollected, about an hour's drive from almost anywhere, on any clear, moonless night. Drive until the sky gets properly black. Stop somewhere safe and quiet. Give your eyes 20 patient minutes, and it will assemble itself above you, the whole river, the teapot, the glow of downtown, exactly as your ancestors had it, every single night. For free. People who do this tend to remember the date. You will own very few sights in your life that are 26,000 years old and delivered fresh nightly. It seems a shame never once to sign for the package. The center mailed it during the Ice Age. And the last mile, the only mile of the whole road it can't manage alone, is yours. So let's end where the light does. Sometime tonight, over your roof, if the sky is clear and the season is right, the glow above the teapot will slide quietly across the south, the way it has over every roof and every sleeper for as long as there have been roofs and sleepers. And landing on your street, this very second and every second, is light that left the center of the galaxy during the Ice Age. Photons that set out over a frozen world of mammoths and firelight have spent 26,000 years falling through the dark, past star after star, through the smoke and the cold and the silence, to end their journey tonight on rooftops and oceans and the upturned faces of anyone who happens to look south. You've seen that light, if you've ever stood under a truly dark summer sky and noticed the Milky Way brighten low over the horizon. You have personally caught photons from the center of the galaxy. With the original equipment, no telescope, just the eyes you were issued. Nothing else that has ever touched you traveled so far to do it. And here's the gentle secret at the bottom of the whole night. Nothing needs to cross that distance for you to belong to the center. You already do. Your street, your bed, the sun itself, everything you have ever loved is in orbit around Sagittarius, a star, the hidden point behind the Archer, sailing around it together at 230 kilometers a second, one lap every 250 million years, faithful as any moon. The iron in your blood was forged and scattered by generations of stars that lived and died in this galaxy's crowded traffic long before the sun was born. You are not a visitor staring across an uncrossable gulf at somebody else's downtown. You are a resident of this galaxy, made of its material, moving on its roads, carrying its history in your bones. At home tonight in its quietest and most fortunate neighborhood. And the light isn't only landing on you, which is somehow the kindest part. Right now, the same 26,000-year-old glow is coming down on the whole night side of the world at once, on deserts where nobody's awake to see it, on the open ocean where it silvers the swells for no audience at all, on mountaintops, on sleeping farms, on a million darkened bedroom windows, on the just and the unjust and the long since asleep. It has done this every night, since before there were nights with names. It fell on the Ice Age hunters who watched it rise, and on the first farmers, and on every sailor who ever steered by the river of heaven, and on your grandparents the night they met. And it will fall, just the same, on nights so far ahead of us that nothing we've built will remain to feel it. The center doesn't choose its windows. It sends to all of them, always, the whole sky's worth. An unbroken delivery older than the species that finally learned the return address. Somewhere tonight, a child is seeing it for the first time and asking what it is. Somewhere, an old astronomer is seeing it for the 10,000th time and still looking. And here, now, it's falling on your street, whether anyone looks or not, which is exactly how the oldest gifts prefer to arrive. It won't even stop when your night ends. That's a small thing worth knowing as morning approaches somewhere behind your curtains. When the sky pales and the stars wash out, they haven't gone anywhere. Daylight is just our own star, shouting over the room, and the room stays exactly as full as it was. All through tomorrow, while you're pouring coffee and catching trains and forgetting every word of tonight, the 26,000-year-old light will keep arriving, landing on the sunlit side of the world, unseen, unfelt, and utterly unbothered about it. The delivery doesn't pause for business hours. The center shines at your street at noon precisely as hard as it does at midnight. We just call it invisible whenever something nearer is louder, which, if you think about it, is true of most quiet, faithful things. So there's no need to hold any of this until tomorrow night, or to be someone who remembers it. The sky doesn't require an audience, and never has. The river flows over the day side and the night side alike, over the watchers and the sleepers and the ones who never once look up. And it will be there, still flowing, still 26,000 years deep. On the next clear evening you happen to remember, it exists. Nothing in the whole night is waiting on you. That's not neglect. That's what reliable means. The galaxy has kept this delivery running through every single human sleep there has ever been. Billions of sleepers a night, for 100,000 years. And it has never once missed, and it isn't going to start with yours. Do one last round of the house in your mind, if it helps, the way a keeper checks a small museum at closing. The kettle is cold and quiet in the kitchen. The windows are latched, the curtains hanging still. The roof is doing its one patient job. And just above it, beginning tonight's last inch, the old light is coming down, silent as frost, asking for nothing. Every room of the night is in order. The sun is in its lane, doing 230 kilometers a second without a sound. The moon is where the moon should be. The center is holding the whole slow wheel by its middle, 26,000 years away. Exactly as far as it was when you started listening. Exactly as far as it will be when you wake. Nothing on the premises needs you. It's the best kind of inspection, the kind where everything was already fine. And if sleep is still circling, count the mileposts of the night instead of sheep, slowly, in any order, letting each one blur as it passes. A grain of sand on your bedside table, and the next grain, a 3-hour walk away, a dinner plate with a fried egg glow at its middle, and a speck of glaze, just over halfway out, holding everything you've ever loved. The moths, swarming a porch light nobody can see. A merry-go-round of antennas in a New Jersey field, turning patiently under the static. A backyard dish in Illinois, listening alone at 3 in the morning. A skater of a star, cracking around a bend in the dark at the bottom of everything. A coin on the moon, watched from a mountaintop in Chile for 30 years. A postcard bound for the moths, 50 years into a 25,000-year delivery. The letter that destroyed a universe, and the red exclamation mark that built this one. 2 porch lights, looking at each other across the dark. A ring of glowing orange around a perfect circle of nothing. Photographed by a camera the size of the world. The quiet ring of streets where the deliveries arrive but the traffic doesn't, and the long light itself. 26,000 years on the road, coming down tonight on the roof over your head. Soft as snow that never needs shoveling. Count them outward if you like, or let them come home instead. Because they all end at the same address, which is yours. So let the numbers go now, one by one. the way you'd set down heavy bags inside the front door. You can forget the 40 million years by morning, and the grain of sand in the next town, and the moths, and the merry-go-round, and the letter that destroyed a universe. The distance doesn't need you to hold it. It will go on being exactly as vast whether anyone comprehends it or not, and the light will go on arriving either way. Tonight, tomorrow night, every night, patient as rain. If your thoughts drift back toward the size of it all as you fade, let them drift like this. The universe is enormous, and you are small. And nothing about that is a problem. Small is where the living gets done. Small is beds, and streets, and names, and sleep. The galaxy handles the big part, the turning and the shining and the keeping of the long roads. And it has never once needed help. Let your breathing slow to suburban speed now, calm and unhurried, the pace of the quiet outskirts where nothing crowds and nothing rattles. The center will hold without you tonight. It has for 4 billion years. The lamps of downtown are lit, the long light is falling, gentle as snow, on the roof over your bed. And the whole slow wheel is turning you through the dark toward morning. If you're still awake and you'd like one more journey, there'll be another one waiting on the screen to carry you onward. Otherwise, stay just as you are, tucked into the galaxy's quietest neighborhood, 26,000 light-years from the bright middle of everything, which is exactly, wonderfully, far enough. The stars will keep spinning while you sleep. Good night.